Here's something you probably didn't vote for, but it's about to change your paycheck, your benefits, and your rights. A 900-page bill just passed quietly, and there's been not enough talk about this and what's actually inside it. And it's going to reshape everything from SNAP benefits to student loans to Medicaid, even taxes as well. And most Americans are probably not even going to end up reading a word of it. But the good news is that I took a deep dive into it. I'm going to walk you through some of the biggest changes that's going to hit you in 2025. So whether you're retired, whether you're working, whether you have a business, whether you're raising a family, I'm going to break this down for you. All right. So let's start off with the SNAP and food assistance and what is going to end up being frozen. All right. So this is going to be important. If you rely on food assistance or you know someone who does, what I'm about to tell you could actually impact the grocery bills for you for a couple of years. So under this new law, the SNAP benefits, also known as food stamps, are no longer going to be tied to the modern food science or nutrition updates, right? So the thrifty food plan, which basically adjusted the evolving dietary needs, is now frozen. So the only adjustment is now inflation, and that's it. So even if food prices skyrocket, your SNAP benefits won't keep up with the pace unless the USDA performs a complete reevaluation. And they can't even consider that until 2027. And even then, they're not going to be allowed to be able to increase the cost. So that means that the benefits are going to stay stagnant, right? Even if healthy food becomes more unaffordable. And here's the scary part, right? So for large families, benefits actually are going to max out at 200% of the base amount. So if you have 9 people in your household, you're still going to be capped at a household of 8. All right. So work requirements are actually going to get tougher on this. So if you are 18 to 65, able-bodied, and not working 80 hours a month or in training, you can actually risk losing your benefits, right? There's going to be some exceptions, of course, under the age of 18 or over the age of 65. If you're medically unfit, pregnant, caring for your young kids, also members of the federally recognized tribes are going to be exempt, but not everyone else, right? So no more easy waivers, especially for states like Alaska and Hawaii, where hardship is going to be common, right? So the bottom line is that the safety net just got stricter. There's going to be fewer waivers, more paperwork, and higher enforcement. All right, so let's talk about utility and internet costs. And you probably want to understand this, right? So it's going to surprise you. The internet costs can no longer be counted in the SNAP calculations. So yes, you heard that right. Even though we use the internet for job applications, school, telehealth, and accessing benefits, is no longer going to be considered an essential expense. All right. Also, unless someone in your household is elderly or disabled, your energy bills are not going to be factored in either. So that means that there's going to be less aid, even if your monthly costs are going to rise with that. All right. So states that are going to be under pressure with this as it relates to the SNAP penalties ahead. So if a state's SNAP error rate is above 10%, they're going to lose 15% of federal funding. Above 6% of funding still gets reduced. So what's likely to happen? So there's going to be more denials, longer waits, and over verification as states try to keep up with their funding. And the scary part is the USDA will only cover 25% of states' administrative costs by 2027. That's going to be down from 50%, meaning less staff, slower approvals. All right. Let's talk about Medicaid and what's going to get cut with that. So let's talk about the healthcare, because there's going to be some serious shakeups coming up, right? So the bill's actually going to freeze 2 big expansions. All right. So number one, for low income elderly applicants, and another one that made it easier to qualify for Medicaid or the CHIP program. These are now on pause. So there's going to be some redeterminations, aka checking if you still qualify. So will now happen more frequently. So if your income fluctuates or you miss paperwork deadlines, your coverage could be canceled. Also, states can tighten home equity rules. So if you own a modest home, you may no longer qualify for the long-term care help. And yes, non-citizens face new restrictions on emergency Medicaid access as well. Most important of all, right, the bill delays staffing improvements at nursing homes. So even if residents need more care, facilities won't be required to hire more staff. And there's also going to be some major tax cuts. But let's talk about who actually is going to benefit from this, right? So this bill is being marketed as a win for middle class. And you've probably heard the headlines like massive tax cuts are coming, relief for workers and families. But listen to this, right? The truth is more complicated and far more targeted. All right. So let's break down who actually benefits and more importantly, who gets left behind. So what's actually staying, what's expanding or being introduced. So we have the standard deduction remains high. So if you're someone who doesn't itemize like most retirees, this is a good news. The standard deduction was previously scheduled to shrink back down in a few years, but this bill actually locks it in. So it is going to mean simpler filing and bigger deductions off the top before taxes are even calculated. There is going to be a new senior specific deductions for 65 years and older. So this is going to carve out just for older Americans. So it's going to be a special deduction that younger taxpayers are not going to get. But, and this is going to be the key, it phases out once your income crosses a certain line. All right. So if you're a retiree living on a modest Social Security, this is going to help. But if you've got a strong pension or healthy investment income, you might lose the benefit entirely. Right. They're also going to expand the child tax credit. So this one aims at families with kids, especially 2 or more. It's going to be a little bit more generous. There's going to be more refundable amounts. It's going to be easier to qualify for this. So in plain English, you actually get money back even if you don't owe money in taxes. But once again, the income thresholds matter. So if you're single or earning more than 200,000 or married or earning more than 400,000, this starts to phase out. All right. So we have the qualified business income deduction, the QBI, that's going to stay. So if you're self-employed, you run an LLC, you're freelancing, if you rent out property, this is going to be for you. So it's going to allow you to now be able to take that 20% deduction of your qualified income. So that's going to stay the same. So that's going to actually be real money for you, especially for side hustlers, if you're a consultant, if you're a real estate investor, even an online creator as well. And now let's talk about the big attention grabbing reforms. So the big one that a lot of people are talking about is the no tax headlines and what they really mean. So number one, they're saying there's going to be no tax on tips. So if you work in hospitality, thinking for instance, restaurants, salons, valet, delivery, your tax on your tips is going to be essentially tax-free up to a certain amount, right? So it sounds amazing. And yes, it could actually boost your take-home pay immediately, but the IRS is going to need a way to verify and monitor your tip income, which could bring some new reporting requirements down the line. So they're saying there's going to be no tax on overtime pay as well. So if you put in 50 plus hours a week, that extra pay could actually be completely untaxed. It's actually being framed as a reward for hardworking Americans, but only if your income stays below a certain threshold, right? So if you make too much, your overtime actually goes back to being taxable. And if you're not earning enough to owe taxes, you're pretty much not going to see any difference, all right? Also, we got the car loan interest now going to be deductible, right? So if you finance a vehicle, the interest portion of your payment can be deducted from your taxable income, but there is a twist, right? You cannot combine this with other deductions like mortgage interest or state taxes in most cases, right? And it likely is not going to apply to luxury vehicles or leased vehicles, right? So what's the catch, right? So here's what most people don't understand. Every one of these benefits, every deduction, credit, or tax break is not coming with there's going to be some strings attached with this, right? So most of these are going to have income caps, right? So if you earn too much, the benefit actually shrinks and disappears, right? So there's going to be what's called phase outs, and many of these credits are going to reduce gradually before vanishing entirely, right? There's also no refund for people who are considered very poor. So if your income is too low to owe taxes, some of these changes are not going to help you at all, right? You can't benefit from a deduction if you don't owe anything in the first place. And that's the tension here, right? So the middle class gets the headline boost, but the working poor may not see anything, right? And high earners actually hit a wall. So the bottom line is this, right? These tax changes, they sound universal, but they're pretty much targeted at a specific economic band, right? Which is working families who owe taxes, all right? Retirees who still file but don't have huge pensions. If you have a side hustle or you're a small business owner and you're below a certain income threshold, it's going to benefit you. Everyone else, you need to look really hard at the fine print to see where or if you even benefit from these. They also have announced the Trump accounts, and what they are essentially is going to be a new program that deposits about $1,000 into government seeded savings accounts for babies born from 2025 to 2029. And they're called the Trump accounts, right? So think of them like baby bonds intended to grow over time. But here's the issue, right? There's no system yet for how these accounts are going to be managed. So let's be honest, 1,000 over 18 years isn't a game changer unless it's part of a broader financial plan. Let's talk about student loans and higher ed. So there's going to be some big changes here. So graduate students can only borrow $50,000 total in federal loans, not per year, but in total, right? So that's going to be a huge shift. So many grad programs cost like 3x that. Also, there's going to be public service loan forgiveness. That's going to get narrower as well. More reporting is going to be required from schools about graduate earnings. There's going to be for lower performing colleges, they actually may lose access to federal aid, but it's not all bad news. The Pell Grants are going to get expanded for short-term job training, so employers can still actually offer tax-free student loan repayment as well. So let's talk about energy, right? And some of the green rollbacks, the fossil fuel boosts to make things worse, right? Just as clean energy was finally scaling up, this bill actually pulls the rug up under it, all right? So now they're getting rid of the EV tax credits, solar home and efficiency upgrades, the clean energy hydrogen incentives. Those are going to get eliminated as well. So new tax breaks are going to be now put in place for oil and gas and traditional drilling. So there's going to be accelerated write-offs for exploration costs, a push for an American first energy with almost no support for transition workers in green tech. All right. So there's also going to be the legal lock-in as well. So now this might probably be the most important thing I share with you here is that this bill actually locks in these changes through enforcement clauses and legal barriers, right? So federal agencies must enforce changes as written. Future administrations can't reverse them with executive orders. State and even individuals can sue if agencies fail to implement the cuts. And here's something really interesting, right? If you want to challenge the law in court, you may have to post a financial bond up front just to be heard, right? And that's the part people are not really talking about, right? This is not a policy shift. It's a legal fortress, right? So here are a couple of my final thoughts as it relates to this and why this matters to you. So some really important things. So whether you're relying on SNAP to feed your family, depending on Medicaid for your healthcare, you're nearing retirement, or just trying to build a future for your kids, this bill is going to impact you. All right. This isn't just some legislation. It's a blueprint that you need to be aware of for over the next 5 years of your financial reality. So it's not theoretical. It's actually personal. So if you're raising kids, your child tax credit might increase. You might even qualify for a new savings account at birth for your child's birth. But at the same time, early education is going to start shrinking, right? SNAP benefits are going to become harder to access, and utility deductions that once helped you keep your bills down are going to be gone and eliminated, right? So you're going to need some help as it relates to this and losing support when it comes to this, right? If you're retired or approaching retirement, you might get a small tax break, a bit more breathing room in deductions. But if your Social Security check is your lifeline, the COLA increase of 2.5 won't keep up with the pace of real world inflation. If you were affected by the WEP or a GPO, you might finally get a relief, but only because the Fairness Act passed separately. This bill doesn't even mention that. All right. So if you rely on Medicaid, the eligibility for this is going to be even more strict. There's going to be redeterminations are going to be more frequent, and a new work requirements may silently disqualify thousands of people who don't even realize they're at risk, right? So states are going to be under pressure to be able to cut costs. And when this happens, you're probably going to feel it in your state, right? If you're in school or thinking about going back, you're going to face some new limits on borrowing, especially for graduate programs. Schools must actually prove their value or risk losing access to federal funds. That might sound fair until your degree gets labeled as too expensive and doesn't qualify. And here's what most people haven't realized, right? This bill doesn't just change policy, it's going to change the rules about how we change policy, right? So executive agencies are not legally bound to enforce cuts even during emergencies. Lawsuits can come from states or individuals if the federal government doesn't comply. And for the first time ever, you might need to be able to post a bond just to challenge a policy in court, right? So that's not just a change, that's literally a lockdown. So this bill is going to rewrite the rules and lock the doors behind it. Future lawmakers cannot undo it with a vote or executive order. So reversals are going to require full congressional action, legal battles, and years of pushback. So if something in here hurts you or someone you love, there's not necessarily going to be a quick fix for this, unfortunately, right? So this is why this stuff matters, and it's why it's important to stay informed. So this part is going to be important. So we don't have to all necessarily agree politically, but we do need to understand how these policies are going to impact you on your tax return, your doctor's office, the grocery store, or even your FAFSA. Because when you stop paying attention, policies like these can be written for someone else and not for you, right? So if this breakdown was helpful for you and helped you understand this a little bit more, make sure you do a couple of things. Make sure you drop a comment below, share your story and your thoughts, share this video with someone who you want to be able to be more informed about this. Check the description here to get a little bit more insights or overview of what was discussed here. But we're in this together, so I'm gonna go make sure I share with you more updates as they come through. But looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care.